Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're taking a deep, investigative look into a feeling I know you're probably all too familiar with. You know that feeling where your relationship with food just seems completely out of your control? Well, we are going to uncover the hidden science and, frankly, the shocking corporate history that's been hiding right in plain sight, in your local grocery store.
So let's start here. Why can't you put the bag down? It's a super relatable question, right? I mean, we've all been there. You feel that awful pang of guilt after polishing off an entire bag of chips or a sleeve of cookies, and you just tell yourself, man, I just need more discipline. But what if I told you that your guilt over those junk food cravings is actually entirely misplaced? Seriously, you aren't lacking willpower, you are fighting a rigged system. So let's dive right in and see exactly how that system was built.
Think about food in nature. It's usually one thing or the other, right? Like an apple is incredibly sweet, but it has almost zero fat. A steak is super rich with fat, but it's got absolutely no sugar. But engineered foods, take a donut. It combines high fat and high sugar at the exact same moment. Now, almost nothing in the natural world does this except for literally one thing, breast milk. That specific combination is your absolute earliest biological signal to eat as much as possible because, well, in nature, it meant survival. Engineered food is deliberately mimicking that exact signal, completely tricking your brain into thinking it's eating the richest, most necessary food on the planet.
Which brings us to Section 1, Engineering the Bliss Point, Science in the Grocery Aisle.
Okay, so what in the world does the number 45 have to do with your food cravings? Well, back in the 1980s, a scientist with a Harvard PhD named Howard Moskowitz was brought in to save a failing pasta sauce called Prego. And he didn't just tweak the recipe a little bit, he created 45 slightly different versions of it. Now, keep in mind, he wasn't some Michelin star chef. Actually, scratch that, he wasn't really a chef at all. He was a psychophysicist hunting for raw data. So, by testing these 45 variations on thousands of people, he realized a massive secret. People didn't want just one perfect sauce. They clustered into groups. And he found one group that desperately wanted extra chunky sauce, a product that didn't even exist on grocery shelves yet. By engineering that single, extra chunky variant, he generated a staggering $600 million.
And that leads us to this. The Bliss Point wasn't discovered by culinary masters in a kitchen. It was discovered by scientists actively hacking human cravings. So the Bliss Point is this exact measurable amount of an ingredient, like sugar or salt, where the human brain just can no longer say no, right before the amount becomes too overwhelming and gross. It's mathematically optimized to make absolutely sure you keep going back for more, basically turning your pantry into a perfectly calibrated science experiment.
Let's look at Section 2, Beating the Body's Clock, How Food Erases Itself.
Have you ever noticed how some snacks just kinda disappear? It's a concept called Vanishing Caloric Density. A food scientist named Stephen Witherly studied how snacks, like Cheetos for example, are quite literally engineered to dissolve almost the instant they touch your mouth. Think of how a cheese puff just melts right into nothing on your tongue. That's for sure not an accident. Millions of dollars were spent to make it disappear exactly that fast. And why does this matter? Because if a food melts fast enough, it quietly tricks your brain into concluding you didn't actually eat anything. Your brain never tells you to slow down because the food literally erased the evidence on the way down.
And this creates the ultimate biological trap. See, your stomach has a built-in delay. It takes about 20 minutes for it to tell your brain, hey, we've eaten enough. In nature, chewing real whole food took time, so that 20-minute gap, it didn't really matter. But junk food is purpose-built to beat that clock. Here's how it works. Step 1, you consume these soft, fast-dissolving, engineered foods that require almost zero chewing. Step 2, your brain registers the food as 0 calories because it just melted away. And step 3, inside that 20-minute window, you easily consume over 1,000 calories before your body's stop signal ever even arrives. Mind-blowing, right?
Section 3, The Tobacco Takeover, the mastermind behind the recipes. Now this is where the story gets incredibly wild. In the 1980s, an astronomical $13 billion changed hands, and honestly, almost nobody noticed what it really meant. Philip Morris, yes, the massive tobacco company behind Marlboro cigarettes, didn't just buy Kraft, they basically bought their way right into the very foundation of the modern American diet. And just like that, the tobacco playbook shifted seamlessly to your pantry. Over the next few years, these tobacco giants came to own the makers of Oreos, Capri Sun, Lunchables, and just dozens of the biggest brands sitting on your shelf. But the truly undeniable impact is in how they operated. You guys, they utilized the exact same labs and the exact same chemists from the cigarette industry.
The experts who spent literally decades engineering nicotine addiction, they just pivoted. They aimed their incredibly advanced neurobiology strategies squarely at the everyday groceries you feed your family.
Section 4. The ignored 1999 warning. The buried evidence.
Fast forward to 1999. A senior Kraft executive actually called a private, closed-door meeting with the heads of America's biggest food companies. He laid all the data out right in front of them, warning them that their products were driving an impending obesity epidemic. He told them point-blank that they'd soon be blamed for it, in the exact same way tobacco had just been blamed for cancer. And the result? One of the most powerful CEOs in the room stood up, claimed they were just giving people what they wanted, and the warning was completely ignored. Together, they decided to do absolutely nothing. It took until 2019 for clinical trials to finally, definitively prove the harm that these executives knew about 2 whole decades prior.
So let's look at that proof in Section 5, the processed food proof, the undeniable physiological data.
This study right here is absolutely striking. Scientists laid 150 healthy teenagers flat inside an MRI brain scanner and actually fed them milkshakes through a tube. Now, the brain's reward center, the part that lights up and says, "Oh wow, that was good," lit up in every single participant. But then the researchers found a terrifying mystery. The teenagers who reported eating ice cream the most often in their normal daily lives actually had the weakest neurological reaction to the milkshake in the scanner. The exact same shake that lit up everyone else barely even registered for them.
And well, scientists had a very specific word for what they were seeing in those teenage brain scans: tolerance. It's the exact same neurological process that happens in the brain of someone addicted to a hardcore drug. Your brain literally turns itself down in response to the frequent stimulus, meaning you require more and more of the substance just to achieve that original feeling. The more junk food you eat, the less pleasure it actually gives you, which forces you to constantly reach for more just to chase that initial high.
To put this all into perspective, in 2019, a researcher named Kevin Hall conducted a landmark study at one of the world's most trusted medical labs. 20 adults lived inside a lab for a whole month. For 2 weeks, they ate whole foods, things like roast beef, rice, veggies. Then, for the other 2 weeks, everything they were given was ultra-processed: cereal, chips, frozen meals. Here's the kicker. Nobody was put on a diet. They could eat as much or as little as they wanted during both phases. The moment they switched to the ultra-processed diet, participants naturally overate by 500 calories a day and gained weight. But on the whole foods diet, those exact same people naturally lost that weight. This definitively proves it is the food itself doing exactly what it was engineered to do, not a lack of human willpower.
Which brings us to the single most important takeaway of this entire explainer. Your craving was never the flaw. It is a survival system running exactly as designed in a world it was never designed for. I really want you to internalize that. You've probably spent your whole life blaming yourself for losing a fight several times a day, but your biological defenses were intentionally studied, mapped out, and beaten by billion-dollar corporations. You weren't failing, you were simply out-engineered in a fight that was never ever meant to be fair.
A rigged game only works for as long as the person being played can't see it. Well, you can see it now. You were never losing a battle against yourself. You just weren't told who was standing on the other side of the grocery aisle designing the whole game against you. So now that you know the corporate tactics hiding right in plain sight on your supermarket shelves, what are you going to do with that information? Next time you choose what to eat, you'll be deciding with your eyes wide open. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. I'll catch you next time.